welcome. Raise Your Inner Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So, how is your mental game this week? How are you doing? I hope all is good and well with you. Things are good here. Not much to report from last week, honestly. Weather's been nice, not too hot or cold, just right. A little bit buggy, but you expect that. A little dry. We could use some rain. Frances got back from her sleepaway camp. That went great. She has another one starting next week. Busy time for her. Peter is just working and interestingly selling clothing items online. There's a site called Depop, Depop.com, where people apparently buy and sell used clothing. Strikes me as a great idea, actually. He's been enjoying that, getting some fresh churn in his wardrobe. So, like I said, life goes on. All is well. I hope that's true for you as well. So plenty to talk about this week, as always. Of course, the big news, Biden dropping out, Kamala taking the lead, all of that. We'll talk more about Project 2025 and their dangerous plans. Also about how to avoid the sort of modern problem of coveting other people's success, wishing we have what they have. Share a helpful relationship communication tip. Latest book and TV show recommendations, and an update on our fabulous electric scooter. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what gave me a lift this week and what things were pulling me down? In the ups category, the big one, and we'll talk more about this in top stories, but it was the whole pivot, the shocking pivot from Biden stepping down to Kamala taking off. Hard to believe it's already been, 5 days when I'm recording this? Oh my goodness. There's way more to say about it strategically and all that, and again, we'll get to that in a minute. But just on an inner game level, I'm noticing that a big chunk of my anxiety, just baseline, always there anxiety, has gone away. I knew I was stressed out and getting more so, especially in the last couple of weeks, but you get a much better sense of how much anxiety and stress you've been carrying when it goes away, when you feel that difference, the relief that's come. Now, of course, there's still plenty to be stressed about, and I expect it will get more intense again as the election gets closer. But for now, this week, I'm just feeling a lot lighter and less burdened, and I notice it like just every moment of every day, basically. It's lovely and unexpected. Other ups are smaller, but still really nice. Our local, of course, a bunch of pickleball news always now. Our local pickleball association got together last weekend and painted new lines on our local tennis court, so we have a new place to play. That was a much bigger project than I expected and super hard to get that just right, but we had a nice turnout, and it was actually fun to work with people I don't normally spend time with. The lines came out pretty great, which is a good feeling, a nice project, just a nice thing all around. Actually got a chance to play on the courts a few days later, had a lot of fun with that. One little fly in that ointment is that the existing tennis courts we painted over, the surface has delaminated from the underlying concrete. It's a long story as to what that's about, but it really affects the bounce of the ball. So that was a little bit of a bummer to do all that work and have the courts end up being not that great to play on. That's just a small disappointment. Otherwise, definitely an up overall. Also pickleball related, Peter and his friends came over to our house the other day and played on the court I put in on our side street this week. They chalked in the lines, pulled out the net, had a great time. That made me super happy, seeing that get used. Also seeing them play, I think I'm obviously happy about that. Also another Peter-related item, we had a dinner out the other night with a friend from out of town, and Peter's girlfriend joined us, and I was just struck with what a lovely couple they are. It actually made me happy to spend time with them as a couple. So nice to see, so happy for him and for both of them. Clearly a really good thing for both of them. That was really nice. Also, kind of got a Peter theme going here. Peter and I went to La Crosse this week for a day. Just did some little shopping, had a nice lunch together. Just a nice dad-son day. That was great too. I am especially grateful and appreciative that he's interested in spending time together at his age, especially. I do not take that for granted at all. It could be easily so much different. So that's a nice lift on its own, but also just a great feeling in general to have that kind of relationship. So that's just a very nice batch of happy for me this week. On the downs, my first thought putting this together was that I didn't really have anything this week, which was kind of amazing to think about. But then I remembered one smaller item. So you probably know I've been watching my weight using the Noom app, keeping things in a maintenance mode for the first time, and that's been going very well, staying really quite stable for several months now, which feels like a great success. This past week, there's been a pretty big spike, like 4 pounds, which, on one hand, just literally can't be for real. You cannot gain that much actual weight in that short a time. So it's probably just a weird spike that happens now and then. But it hasn't gone back down yet. So the whole idea, with ups and downs in general, is that downs are things that pull on us emotionally. They take the fun out of kind of everyday things. They make it harder to feel happy and feel proud of ourselves, harder to be the person we want to be. So this little one is worth mentioning because it is sort of hanging there in the background. What's going on? How much of this is real? Have I been eating things I'm not paying attention to? Am I going to need to kick into weight loss mode again? What am I doing that stopped working? All those kinds of thoughts are kicking around in there and just adding a bit of negativity and worry to an otherwise pretty great week. Again, not a big thing, but also not nothing. It's on my mind. It's a low-grade concern. So those are my ups and downs for the week. Big relief with the Biden-Harris story, several lovely family moments, and a little concern on the weight front. All right, next up, top stories. So again, Joe Biden drops out, Kamala Harris steps in just a few days. Everything feels completely different, doesn't it? Excuse me. I just talked about the relief I feel, the reduction in anxiety, and that's happening because I am enthusiastic and optimistic about Kamala's chance of winning. And not just winning, but actually winning big, kicking Trump's ass. I know that's premature. I know it's supposed to be a tight race. It's almost certainly going to be a tight race. And I'm no kind of political expert, but that is how it feels to me, and I like it. Her energy, her ability to take it directly to him, which was one of the main worries we had with Biden, right, was that for whatever reason, he just wasn't making the case well. But right out of the gates, she was so sharp and clear and strong on it. It was just thrilling to finally hear the kind of messaging we've been hoping for. The contrast is so clear now. You don't even have to hear a word of what either of them say. Just look at them. Turn off the sound. Watch them when they talk. The contrast is clear. I have a theory. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this here, but the candidate who wins, at least in the last 20 years or so, is the one that most clearly represents change, and even just physically looks like change. And my evidence for this theory is that Obama won Iowa twice. Deep red state, Iowa, right next door. The black guy named Obama won. So the resistance can't only be about racism and hate. It has to be something else, and I think that something else is change. Above all else, that's what voters are looking for. Obama versus McCain. Who would have believed Obama would beat McCain in Iowa? But he did, because he looked and sounded like change. Trump was change versus Hillary Clinton. Biden was change from Trump. The big frustration for people this time is that there wasn't a change option available. But now there is, and it could not be more clear. Again, I don't know, but I think she has a lot more tailwind than people are thinking. I honestly think she's going to be very hard for him to beat. Now, she has some big headwinds too, of course. I'm not forgetting about the racism and misogyny in this country. But again, Obama won Iowa. We can't forget that and what that tells us. Trump is not popular. I just heard someone point out that after these last 3 weeks, which could not have been more positive for a candidate, his opponent had a disastrous debate. He survived an assassination attempt. Democrats were imploding. He had a good convention. After all that, his approval hardly moved an inch. It's still basically 40%. Most people in this country do not want Trump to be president. So if we can unleash all that anti-Trump energy and get people, especially young people and women, fired up and out there talking to people about abortion rights and climate and health care and making rich people pay their fair share, and of course how crazy and dangerous Trump is, Project 2025, I honestly don't see how he can beat her. That is profoundly exciting, right? Isn't it? It just is. And think of this too. If she does end up beating him, of course, many great things will come directly from that. The policies, first woman president, just crazy amount of good things. But maybe my favorite is that it also means he will go to jail. There's really no doubt about that. It may take a while, but those cases are solid, and there'll be no way around him. He will finally actually be held fully accountable for his actions. That will be a beautiful day. And it's starting to feel like it's really possible again. We'll see how things look next week. Given the whiplash we've all gone through, I would not bet on anything at this point, but for now, I'm feeling pretty good about our chances. So to that end, getting back to the work in front of us, a little more this week on Project 2025. First, and this is sort of hilarious, but Trump is trying to distance himself from it now, trying to walk back his connection with it. I don't know them. I don't know anything about it. Anyone who says that is just lying, right? Fake news. Just the same stream of bullshit coming out of his mouth. You can almost just take everything he says and assume the truth is the opposite. He really does lie that much and that instinctively. But of course, he does know about it. He said so on many occasions. He's praised the people at the Heritage Foundation who, created the whole thing. Most of the people involved are connected to him and his campaign. Don't give any of that denial any weight at all. I'm sure you wouldn't. But if you have to talk to somebody else, it's just total bullshit. This is exactly what they'll do if he's elected without any doubt. And of course, he's lying about it because he knows how unpopular the ideas are, like epically unpopular. He knows it hurts him politically, and especially now that Kamala can hammer him on it every day, he's feeling the heat to separate himself from it, but he can't. So I'm not going to go into the details of the plan today, just a couple things I wanted to share. First, there's a great video from Molly Jong Fast, really good explainer that can help you understand what it's about if you don't feel like you know enough about it yet, and also a good piece to share with others if you want to let them know, so I'll link to that in the notes. The main thing is to point out the comment from the leader of the Heritage Foundation, again, the group behind the project. He said, maybe you saw this, the project is about a second American revolution, and it will be bloodless if the left allows it to be. Let that sink in. It's a second American revolution, meaning the democracy we have now that has evolved and developed since the first revolution is not going to remain. They're going to get rid of that and replace it with a minority rule system that enables them to force their white Christian nationalist beliefs on the rest of us. That is literally what they're planning to do. Take the power of the government and make sure they can have and hold power from then on. Worse yet, they're promising to do that by force, if necessary. Bloodless, if the left allows it. If no one resists us, it'll be a peaceful revolution, but if they do, you're on notice. That is Project 2025, and Trump and the Republicans will happily enact every piece of it if they win. It sounds like crazy, unbelievable, irresponsible hyperbole, but it's all there in their own writing. So check out the video. Read more about it online if you want. You can read the document itself. They're not hiding it. And that's one more important point. By putting it out there so clearly, if he does win, he can accurately say he has a mandate to do it. If we know what he's promising to do and we still elect him, he has permission to do it. So this is one more reason to get out there and talk to people and use it to help convince them that Trump and the whole movement have to be defeated. So that's top stories this week. We now have a real chance to win this thing and a reminder of how important it is to do that. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Last week, we talked again about the core inner game concept. You have thoughts, but you're not your thoughts. When this clicks in for you and becomes fully real, it gives you an incredible new power over your life. This week, I want to talk about a new Inner Game Gold idea, which is you can't want part of someone's life without wanting all of their life. I love this idea so much, especially in today's world with social media and how inundated we are with images of other people's success. I think it's especially important with our kids and the whole idea of becoming an influencer. I talk with my kids about this actually a fairly good amount. They look up to people, naturally, who are famous online. They see their glamorous looking lives and want their own lives to be like that. Totally understandable, but also not great, not the kind of thing at least we want our kids to be focusing on and aspiring to. And this idea is super helpful in countering that. I heard a great example of it just this week. There's a Formula One race driver named Kevin Magnussen, drives for the Haas team. You can't get much more glamorous than being a Formula One race driver. I mean, it looks great and exciting. It's daring, brave, handsome, risking their lives every week. Fastest, coolest looking cars in the world. They're super famous, making a ton of money. Magnussen makes like $5 million a year, and that's one of the lowest salaries. The top guys are making 10 times that. So, who doesn't want that? Or at least what teenage boy doesn't want that? But then you have to look at the rest of his life. Being a Formula One driver is like being on the road with a rock band, which also sounds glamorous, but is anything but. Constant travel, away from home, no family life, nothing even remotely normal in your life. But this is even more demanding, right? Hard work, dangerous work. The pressure is insane. I follow F1 a little bit, and this part just kills me. The top team in the past few years, Red Bull, every team has 2 cars and drivers, if you don't know. Their top driver has been dominant for a couple of years now, just really dominant. Their second guy, still a great driver, been racing in F1 for years. Their team, side point, is winning like almost all the time. But if the second guy has even a couple of off weeks, even though it has no effect on the team's standing, on their success, people are instantly talking about how maybe he's done, maybe he'll get replaced, he's lost, he didn't have it anymore. There is no margin for anything but peak, ultimate performance every week. It really is insane. In fact, I may have said this before here, but I heard an interview with the head of the Mercedes team. His name is Toto Wolff. He said he has never seen a truly great driver who wasn't also a broken person. A broken person. The commitment and the work it takes to be the best is so ridiculous that no normally healthy person would ever want to do it. It has to be someone with an unhealthy need to prove themselves. I mean, think about that. And then bring it back to our statement. You can't want one part of someone's life without wanting all of their life. If you dream of being a great Formula One driver, you're dreaming of being an unhappy person with no life. Yes, money, fame, great, but no life, unhappy. That's an extreme example, but the idea is applicable to all of us in all kinds of fields, all kinds of things we might want to focus on in our life. You can't just want the successful part of what you see in someone else's life because you can't separate that from the rest of their life. So, for the rest of us, what this really does is help us stop feeling bad about our own messy lives, stop wishing our lives were more like the people we see on Instagram and Facebook. Whenever you catch yourself feeling that way, just remember the totality of their life is almost certainly not the life you would want. If you really look, you would not trade their life for yours. You just wouldn't. So for us, I think it's helpful. I also like having that conversation with our kids. It's a much bigger issue for them, and freeing themselves from that desire and mistaken impression. It's a great gift. For more mental game insights, check out the Raise Your Inner Game book. If you haven't read that, there's a link here. If you play sports, check out the Sports Academy training. Perfect for that. Either way, that's our new Inner Game goal this week. You can't want one part of someone's life without wanting all of their life. Really helpful perspective. All right, next up, raise your outer game. Last week, we talked about negative triggers in your life, and that a great way to improve your inner game is to look at those and think about ways you can limit them or even remove them from your life. And the examples were the therapist who helps people disconnect from their families if it's a toxic situation, and me clipping my nails. This week, it's another relationship tip of sorts, this one about communication. So this comes from my previous book, Don't Just Talk, Be Heard, and that material comes from the work I used to do as a speaking and communication coach. So the idea is, when you're talking with someone, a great way to improve your connection with them and strengthen the relationship is to basically keep the focus more on them than on you. So rather than talking about yourself, ask them how they're doing, what's going on with them, what they're working on. And then when they tell you, reflect back to them the feelings in what they're saying. So for example, you say, how are you? How was work? Or how was school? What are you working on? And then as you listening, and of course first do make sure you actually are listening. Don't get stuck in your head, distracted. Keep your attention on them. But as you're listening, the most powerful part of this is to reflect back to them whatever feelings there are in what they're saying. If they're talking about a test they were nervous about, for example, you'd say, oh yeah, that's hard. Or just on your face, you show the feeling of that. If they're talking about something that went well, you could say, that's great. I bet that felt really good. And, things like that. You get the idea. There is nothing more powerful in building a relationship than those two things together. First, showing that you are genuinely interested in them. And second, that you get them, that you understand the feelings they're experiencing. It can take a bit of practice to remind yourself to do this. It's much more natural for most people to talk about themselves, but you can get in the habit pretty quickly, and I think you'll find it surprisingly enjoyable and effective. So that's a great skill to work on. To learn more about that one and other communication tips, check out that earlier book, Don't Just Talk, Be Heard. I'll put a link to that below as well. To be perfectly honest, I'm not super crazy about the writing in that book anymore, but the content is solid and helpful, and it all comes from the coaching I was doing at the time. So it's real life, practical stuff. In any case, that is our Raise Your Outer Game for this week. A nice relationship building communication tip. Keep the focus on the other person, ask them about themselves, and reflect back to them the emotions and what they're saying. Next up, our challenge of the week. This week, probably no surprise, I want you to work on this. Make a note to yourself. Try using this approach in your conversations. Ask the person about themselves, what's going on, what you're working on, and so on. Actively listen to what they're saying. Most important, reflect back to them in some way the emotions in what they're saying. I also think writing down your experiences in a journal of some kind will be helpful with this one. It can take a bit to get used to doing this, as I mentioned, and there are a surprising number of good feelies that come when you do. So do make time to reflect on this challenge, too, as you do it. But that's this week's challenge of the week. In your conversations, practice focusing on the other person and reflecting back the emotions, and write down your experiences in a journal of some kind. All right, next up, highly recommended. This week, update on last week's book, Damascus Station. That ended up being really good. A little hard. The violence in there is kind of right on that edge of being a little disturbing, but excellent story, well written, great spy stuff if you like that. Definitely recommended that one. I picked up another in the Gabriel Alon series I mentioned a few weeks ago. Daniel Silva. Oh, I've forgotten who writes that book. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'll put the link down there. This one's called The Defector. It's set earlier in Gabriel Alon's life story, so he's still a spy, not the arts world stories that come later. Excuse me. So possible, just for me, it might be a little bit much. Back-to-back spy books. But we'll see. I think it's probably going to be just fine. They're always great so far, so good with that one. For a show, I don't remember if I've mentioned this before. Seems like I would have. But anyway, we're into the third season of The Bear on Hulu. That show is absolutely great. It's still fresh and interesting. And this sounds like a funny thing to praise them for, but it's just insanely tense. I don't think I've ever seen a show that can be that intense. And it's especially interesting because this isn't a mystery or a thriller or a crime drama or, a horror film. It's a restaurant. But somehow they make that just crazy tense. But it's so engaging. Our whole family just totally loves that. I also wanted to revisit our electric scooters. I probably mentioned these last year, but we're deep into summer now. And I'm reminded again how great these have been. The model is from Razor. They're known for their non-electric scooters with the skate wheels. Been around forever. We actually got our scooter, this particular model, from Target. It's called the EcoSmart Cargo. I'm not 100% sure it's available anymore, but hopefully they have something else like it if not. But anyway, this have been such a great thing for us. We've made such good use of them. We ended up with 2 of them, sort of a longer story there. But, quick trips to the store, especially great for Frances, who's not driving yet, getting herself to school and stuff. Every time I take it out, like I put a basket in the back. And if I got to go to the store, which is, about a mile away, I'll just hop on the scooter and go. It works great. It's all electric, and it's just fun. I mean, you don't normally get a piece of fun as part of going to the store, right? But this adds that nice little bit. I just love them. Now, they're not perfect. They're a bit noisy, which is surprising given that they're electric, but there's something in the drivetrain that's pretty loud. Also, it's a rough ride, fairly rough. They have big tires, but no suspension. Also had to replace the rear brakes on one of them already, but they were good about that. The support was reasonable. They're also, on the other hand, a lot less expensive than other options, even less than most e-bikes I've seen. So a few small quibbles, but overall, highly recommended. Super fun and handy and environmentally friendly. Razor brand EcoSmart Cargo scooter. Reminder to check out the Raise Your Inner Game book for more mental game goodness, if that's of interest to you, or the Sports Academy training to take your game to a higher level. If you play, I'm sure you want to take your game to a higher level. Links to everything in this week's notes. Otherwise, that's it for this week. I hope you have a great week. Keep up the good work. I'll talk to you next time.